Refi TV, brought to you by Auction.com.
I'm Samantha Rowan, and this is Refi TV.
And I'm Billy Procida, here with an opinion on everything.
And we're here today with Jody Kriss, a principal of East River Partners.
Good morning, Samantha.
Good morning, Jody. And we're also here with Jim Wacht, who is the head of Lee & Associates New York office.
Good morning, Sam.
And today we're going to be talking about New York City's middle market. To start off, how available is capital for middle market transactions in New York?
Well, you told me when we were talking this morning that it's not that available. What I'm finding, at least with my market, that it's very available. So I think a lot of it depends on who you are.
And the kind of projects you're doing as well?
Right.
No.
But we've been in business. He's just a young kid. I'm an old guy.
He's not that young. I've known this guy for almost 15 years. He started the right way. He's actually one of the few guys in the business, and this is why I like him. He knows how to work a computer, but he realizes that it's not just sitting in front of the computer. This is a guy who gets out, meets contractors, walks buildings, and that's probably why he's got money chasing him.
But I've been doing this for a very long time, and so I have a relationship with lenders for a very long time, and they're pretty eager to do anything I want to do. So, at least from my point of view, money's very available.
And all kinds of money, like senior debt, mezzanine debt, across the board?
I don't tend to do a lot of fancy financing. I don't have a huge capital stack when I do my deals. It's basically plain vanilla real estate, so it's usually a first mortgage. Occasionally I'll do a mezz loan, but yeah, it's pretty available.
And Jody, you're focused mostly on Manhattan and Brooklyn, is that right?
Only on Manhattan and Brooklyn.
Cool. And what kinds of deals are you doing there? Condo conversions, other multifamily deals?
Yeah, our company is working within a relatively narrow niche. All we do is condos. Most of it's conversions of existing buildings to condo, where we go in and we gut renovate the entire building. We have 6 of those, and we have 2 ground-up projects.
Well, so the Brooklyn market, I mean, I'm starting to see numbers that are getting close to the Manhattan prices. It was originally a market where people went to for value. Now what's keeping them there? What's driving it?
Well, we went to Brooklyn originally in 2010, early 11. What attracted us most was that we saw that condo conversion margins were roughly similar all across the country, but the rental yield in Brooklyn was higher than anywhere else that we saw. We did projects where we would go in and we could finish a condo and have a 7 yield as a rental 3 years ago. And then when rents went up, it turned out some of them were 8 or 9 yields as a rental. We still sold them as condos. But while we were there was a cultural renaissance that's been happening. It's not necessarily why we went there, but it's what's kept us there. And so what's really interesting about it is people ask us what's the ratio of prices in Brooklyn and Manhattan, and it started out, it was about half. Brooklyn was half of Manhattan, and we thought that gap would close. It really hasn't, because Manhattan has gone up by so much that although Brooklyn's gone up by so much, the ratio stays
You get skeptical in Manhattan. I look at Manhattan now, I wouldn't buy half the things that I'm being asked to finance, which is my rule is when it makes no sense, it makes no sense. I mean, 1,000 feet for $2 million, it's starting to get irrational, don't you think?
And that's almost a bargain now in Manhattan.
Yeah,
I mean, you're seeing prices, condos at 6,000, 7,000.
And the concern is, as a CIO investing my investors' capital, I look and I go, it feels like a game of musical chairs. When the foreign money, which I think is mostly what's driving the crazy prices in Manhattan,
I agree,
stops coming in, what's going to happen to Manhattan values?
Well, isn't some of the foreign money also going into Brooklyn and Queens and parts of Jersey City and
They've discovered Brooklyn. Yes, foreign. I mean, the Chinese bought a major development site in Williamsburg. So yes, the foreign money now is looking into Brooklyn. But you're right. I mean, absolutely. I think the Manhattan market is very much supported by foreign money. It has been now for the last couple of years. When that music stops, it's going to be ugly.
So now, as far as capital, I mean, I'm finding, and as a guy who runs private equity, that rates are getting compressed. People are chasing anything. So I'm imagining that that's also what's creating, I think, a little bit of an artificial value. Any concern on that or opinion on that?
What you see in a market typically, when a market first begins to recover and you start looking at people's underwriting, they underwriting based upon what today's values are. So they'll do a projection based upon what today's rents are. When markets start getting frothy like we have right now, what people start to do in their underwriting is they move the market up to where they're projecting the market to go. So they're reaching for a market. So when we look at underwritings now,
when anybody comes in with a, I'm building something that I'm delivering in 2 years,
right,
and my prediction is it's going to go up by 20% off of current value, I go, whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah.
You know, I always want the break even to be 60 to 70% of current value.
It's what I call like the Stuyvesant Town syndrome. It's, you know, projecting big rent growth where it may or may not exist.
Billy, I don't actually agree with everything you guys are saying. I think values in Manhattan today seem in line with values since the beginning of my career. I don't think they're out of line. So if you looked at home values in this country in 2006 and 2007 and you looked at affordability index, home values across the country it was the least affordable it had ever been. If you took ratios of people's incomes, what the ratio that they were paying to own their home.
Right, the old school was 25% of your income goes towards your mortgage. Now it keeps creeping up.
Right.
If you talk to your parent, back when my parents, it was like 20% of your income would go towards housing, and over time it's creeped.
But if you look at the same analogy in Manhattan, my entire career, you built condos at a 4 yield and sold them at a 3 yield in Manhattan, and I still see that ratio intact at $2,000 a foot. With rents that are in the 90s and expenses that are relatively low. It still costs $10 operating expenses to run a building, and taxes are maybe $15. So if you have $25, you're at $65, $70 net.
Well, you're rationalizing the for sale market versus the rental market, which, by the way, I got a kid living down the block spending $2,500 on a room this big. And I think that's also driving.
And he's sharing it with 4 other people.
And sharing with 4 other people. $2,500 each.
Right, but the rental market tends to be much less inflated. These are actual people with jobs that they have today. So there's a direct correspondence between the money that they make today and the money they're able to go out and spend on rents. And it's much less inflated by the capital markets. Right? I think we'd all agree to that.
I'm still seeing, and look, as a guy who does a lot of distressed and has a lot of people come to him in trouble, I'm still seeing a lot of people living way above their means. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges. You know, you look at the NYU market, half of the kids that are buying $2 million to $4 million apartments with their parents' money are come from overseas. My kid just came out of NYU. I couldn't believe how many kids had $2 million apartments. So I think the biggest concern for Manhattan for me is if you just watch CNBC any day and you hear about money's just got no place to go. Now, the fact is that we are still going to be, as the world goes, the best and safest place to put money. It's just I'm starting to feel like if I wouldn't pay for that much money myself, why would I invest in it?
But the other thing that's happening is, you know, we look at New York and we look at it relative to the rest of the country. What you really have to do is look at New York relative to the rest of the world. And the fact of the matter is New York relative to European cities and some South American cities and now some Asian cities is still cheap. So when the foreign money is looking at New York, they look at it as a bargain.
I think
I concur with.
Manhattan appears to us to be the world's mattress. It's a place where you park money.
Great point. Good point.
Park money. You don't really expect a solid return on it, but there is a relationship between the yield that you generate building a condo and the price of those condos, and that relationship seems to be constant, except at the $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 foot market, which is totally detached, totally speculative. We don't understand it. We're not doing it. God bless those that are making $1 billion.
The next cover in the Institutional Investors is a Manhattan map with money sticking out of it like it's a mattress. It's a great image.
Yeah, it's more true than I think a lot of
people. But the people that
realize.
really understand and make a lot of money in Manhattan real estate don't do it expecting to enjoy the current cash flow from the property. At best, they put low leverage, and the properties stay roughly flat until sometime in the future when the cash flows ramp up. And that seems to be the prevailing wisdom, the prevailing logic of owning property in Manhattan.
Do you think that, you know, it's my sense just from talking to a bunch of people in the market that there's fewer and fewer development parcels in Manhattan, and what's going to happen once they're all used up? Is that when, like, say, Brooklyn or Queens or Astoria or one of those markets are going to rise more?
Well, when you say development site, a development site in Manhattan isn't basically a plot of land. It's basically an old antiquated building that you try to vacate and take down and you build something different. So if you look at it from that point of view, I think there's an abundance of development sites in Manhattan. I think it's going to get a little bit more difficult now going forward because I think with the new administration we're going to see more landmarking, and landmarking has been a real problem for developers. and you're going to see a strengthening of the rent laws. And I think it's going to make it more difficult now to take older buildings that really do deserve to come down, but to redevelop them.
By the way, if we can just, I want to hit on that. De Blasio, what do you think he does positive, negative for New York? What's your view?
Because he's also a big supporter of more affordable housing for the city as well.
I probably shouldn't admit this in public, but I supported him and I voted for him. I am distressed by the fact that over 30% of New Yorkers live below the poverty line. That is an issue that has to be addressed. He's made some good appointments. I'm not real crazy about the council speaker. Well, you know, the jury's out on what's going to happen there. De Blasio's a smart guy, and of all the people who were running, I think he was the smartest, and I think, you know, I'm hopeful, but I think, you know, as a real estate person, we're always hopeful.
Jody, you're a developer who may have projects under review for approval, so I won't even ask you to opine on that. But what do you think about...
But he loves the Attorney General. He thinks Eric Schneiderman's doing a great job.
What do you think about the one thing that he came up with, which I actually do like, which is vacant lots, particularly in the outer boroughs, should be either, at the very least, well-maintained, because I got this whole thing about responsible ownership. If you got a crappy lot next to where I'm building, it should look clean. But I actually like the idea of pushing people with vacant land to either build or sell it. What do you think about that one?
It's a clever proposal. I had, my office for years was on 57th and 5th, and if you walked between 57th and 5th and 57th and 6th, right there in the middle of the most valuable property for the last decade, there's been just an empty lot. There should be a penalty for keeping your lot empty.
Particularly in the outer boroughs. I think in the outer boroughs, where they need development, where people need jobs, I think it's a great idea. So that's one I'll go, Mayor de Blasio, go for it.
But there's another alternative, and it's something I got involved in through one of my not-for-profits. There are a lot of community groups out there who would love to take some of these vacant plots and turn them into community gardens and the like, and you would think that'd be a relatively simple process. It's an impossible process, because these vacant lots come under the jurisdiction of so many different city agencies, federal agencies. Nobody really knows. There's no uniform way of dealing with any of this. So if they made it easier for community groups, at least, to be able to take over these lots for a period of time. You know that you can get rid of them when you need to develop.
That's always been the challenge. Once they get
you got to be able to
they never want to give it up. Which works on city-owned lots. I don't know if it works on private lots much, but I personally think that Brooklyn's now getting saturated. I went on a tour of the Bronx last week, back where I used to build in Melrose. I couldn't believe there's been $5 billion worth of new development there. Have you ever looked around in the Bronx?
I bought 3 buildings in the Bronx 3 years ago, my first foray into the Bronx. You know, multifamily, 100-unit plus buildings, elevator buildings, in decent, not great neighborhoods, not Riverdale, but, you know, the middle of the Bronx, Grand Concourse. I sold them a little over a year later. It's a whole different business to owning real estate. It's very management intensive. You're dealing with a demographic.
Oh, it's high touch, yeah.
You're dealing with a demographic that has real issues trying to pay their rent. It's not that they don't want to pay their rent. They don't have the wherewithal to pay the rent. They're losing their jobs. They're being laid off. Single mother families. And the other issue is these buildings, because they don't make a ton of money, usually have so much deferred maintenance that the maintenance issue of these buildings is impossible. And then you have to deal with the city regulatory agencies. We sold them, and we sold it for a decent profit, but I never want to do that again.
It is hard work. It is hard work. But the new construction, most of it today in the Bronx, is for sale housing. You know, predominantly middle market for sale housing, which is kind of bread and butter. I always say, in a recession, apple pie still sells. So, you know, you cater to the masses, sometimes you eat with the classes, and you cater to the classes, sometimes you eat with the masses, right? So,
Billy, I know you know the Bronx a lot better than I do, but I would take a trip up there with you because we're interested. I mean, what's fascinating about what's happening in this $9,000 and $2,000 square foot market in Manhattan, I heard a couple developers on a panel last week, and one of them was the guy who's building the $9,000 square foot product, and the other one wasn't. And the one who wasn't was lamenting the fact that Manhattan's becoming unaffordable for his kids who are getting out of college. I don't really care about his kids who are getting out of college living in Manhattan. I don't think it's that much fun to live on the Upper West Side for a post-college grad anyway. I think they're having more fun in Greenpoint and Williamsburg, and that's a better place for them to live. And the fact that there's $2,000 a foot minimum pricing in Manhattan has been the best possible thing that could ever have happened to the boroughs, because it's lifted the prices in Brooklyn to $1,000 and Long Island City to $1,000 to where development really makes sense, and you're starting to see the resurgence of those boroughs. And we're basically running out of prime property in Northwest Brooklyn to where it's got to go somewhere else. East Brooklyn, possibly the Bronx.
And now Harlem, and we just financed the bridge loan on a $200 million project in Harlem. A year ago, they were telling me that product would sell for $700 a foot. Today, they're saying $1,200.
Is this north or south of 125?
This is on 122nd and Frederick Douglass. I mean, and I was a builder in Harlem throughout the 80s and 90s, building homeless housing and low-income housing, and you got luxury market rate condos right next to the homeless housing jobs, and everybody seems to get along, and crime is down, and street traffic's up.
When you look at how neighborhoods in the city transition from being a questionable neighborhood into becoming a better neighborhood, it usually takes 2 market cycles at a minimum. So Harlem had its first market cycle with the last upturn. We went through this downturn. Harlem is now having its second renaissance, and I think this is the time when Harlem will reach critical mass, where it will now become a good middle-class neighborhood. I think that's going to happen in this upturn. And what you're seeing in Harlem is, a lot of now nice restaurants are opening. I'm actually going tomorrow night to the Mittens Jazz Club that just opened.
Beautiful
reopened.
place.
Have you been? It's great.
I only went through it when it was just getting finished.
Okay.
Spectacular finish. It's Richard Parsons.
Richard Parsons put the money in behind it. So yeah, there's a lot that's going on in Harlem right now.
On that note, we're kind of nearing the end of our time, so I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about what everyone here is seeing and projecting for the rest of 2014. Will we continue to see the lending market active? Will we continue to see prices rise? And will people continue to be breaking ground on new deals?
I think people will become a little more cautious, at least the experienced guys. The newbies, of course, are going to come rushing in, and they're going to screw everything up. You're no longer a newbie. Yeah, you're no longer a newbie. You've got some scars to show for it, but the newbies are rushing in. You see a lot of people without a lot of experience or track record doing deals. I think lenders will begin to tighten their belt, or they're going to underwrite a little tighter. What's interesting, I do a lot of commercial real estate as well. I think actually we're going to begin to see rent growth. We haven't seen real rent growth in the office market. We're beginning to see that now. And I think in Brooklyn we're going to see a very vibrant rental market, commercial rental market happening in Brooklyn. Brooklyn right now I think is primed to become really sort of Manhattan's second downtown area.
I disagree with Jim about the lenders. I think it's still recovering from 07 to 11. I think lending standards are still loosening. Lenders are still getting more and more competitive. A lender who we do business with called me up and asked for my opinion about something in this area, actually. He said, what do you think of these condos at $1,500 a foot? I said, they should definitely sell for $1,500. He said, no, I'm thinking of lending $1,500 a foot.
Oh my goodness.
So I think the standards are loosening up.
And you said, where do I submit my application for my next loan?
By the way, your loan's turned down. Right. But yeah, I think that more capital keeps coming in until, I don't think capital learns its lessons. Individuals do, but the markets don't.
Capital swings too fast. In my last article I wrote for Institutional Investor, well, actually in April I wrote an article saying everything's fine, let's not screw it up, because things felt good last April. By October I wrote an article saying it's happening all over again, saying I just got passed by a minivan with a community banker in front of it, and I'm a private equity guy. So we're supposed to be in the Ferrari passing the bankers, and right now I'm seeing lending standards just going out the window.
Yeah, the agencies jumped in last week, and they just said,
in fact, the cover story in Institutional Investor. I mean, look, my biggest concern is, frankly, I still have difficulty underwriting potential terrorism. I still have difficulty now, and I never thought this would be an issue, but Mother Nature is now an issue to underwrite. I never really thought about it, but I'm really looking for high ground. And global calamities. I mean, look, the one thing great about our business is no matter what happens in the world, stock market moves around. Real estate values intrinsically don't move. In fact, real estate kind of is this. This and this only happens by bankers pumping too much or pulling too much back. So, I actually hope that, and I just published my forecast, which said that I think we got 3 good years because we had 4 bad years. It's just natural. But I hope we just bump along, because the more we bump along, the less of a chance we have a crash.
I agree. I like slow, steady markets.
And frankly, we need more guys like you that have sense, that have put in 15 years ago I met you, and I really think that I see a lot of the talent coming in. They spend too much time with spreadsheets, and We need more guys, and you've got to be out there lecturing and taking care of the next
I'll
group
tell you what I
coming in,
am looking forward to.
Because
My new competitors.
by the way, you got to teach your competitors. Because let me tell you something. If your competitors aren't good at their craft,
They screw it up.
they'll screw it up for you.
There's no question.
Well, you do what I do. I invest in my competitors.
Right. Good idea.
Find the good ones.
That's all the time we have for today, so I'd
Great.
like to
Thank
thank
you.
you all very much for being here.
Thanks so much.
Thank you,
Yeah,
guys.
thank you. Thank you, Billy.
Thanks for joining us.
And I'm Samantha Rowan, and this is Refi TV.
Billy Procida. Have a nice day.